Hey everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, I'm really excited to welcome back returning guest, Andrew Sgambati. We talk about his new upcoming Kiss movie, One Last Time, live from New York. I think you guys are really going to like the film and enjoy hearing all about it in this chat. While you're here, hit that subscribe button below on my YouTube channel. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. Now, without further ado, let's get started with my chat with Andrew Sgambati as we talk about his new Kiss film, One Last Time, live from New York. All right. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. I'm really excited to have back with me on the show, Kiss filmmaker. You may have seen his last film, The Greatest Show on Earth. Now he's got a new one coming out, One Last Time, live from New York. Andrew Sgambati, welcome back.
It's really good to be here. It's funny because it took us such a long time to get the first one, tied down. And then now here I am, not even almost just like 2 months later,
Absolutely.
back again.
Absolutely.
Back again. So thankfully you gave me the keys. You didn't change the lock.
Not at
so
all.
I'm very happy about that.
Not at all. So you've been hard at work on a new film here, but maybe even before we jump into the film, and I know you touch on this, and I love that you touched on this in the film, right? For the people watching this, give them some of your backstory of how and when you became a Kiss fan, because I love this story.
This is a great story. It's one of my favorite stories to tell, and hopefully some of the people listening haven't heard it. If you have on one of my many podcasts, I'm sorry. But I'll keep it brief. I'll keep it brief and interesting. Yep. So, I was 3 years old. I loved comic books. I loved all of that stuff, and I didn't even realize that Kiss was a band. I just had the Kiss comic because they were on Marvel, and then I had seen an old VHS recording of Kiss Meets the Phantom. So when Kiss fought Doctor Doom in the comics, I saw, I see Kiss here in this movie, then they're fighting Doctor Doom and Spider-Man fights I just thought they were superheroes. I had no idea they were a band. But because I had seen Kiss Meets the Phantom, that music was already kind of seared into my brain before I knew what music was. But as I got a little older, I knew that Spider-Man was fake, but Kiss was real. Like Gene Simmons actually spit fire, and they actually descended from there. So they got me before the music did, and that was probably by design. They got me at the right age. Okay. And I tell people this all the time, that I'm part of that lost generation of Kiss fans, because in the late 80s, there really weren't any young fans coming into Kiss because of the makeup or anything, because the makeup had been off for almost 10 years at that point.
Absolutely.
So you had your adolescents and you had your metalheads that were into Kiss, which that's what they were trying to do at the time, but you had very little young kids being into Kiss. So when Kiss put the makeup back on in 96, unless your parents were huge Kiss fans, there were no young kids in the audience initially. Right. It's changed over time.
Absolutely.
Parents have brought their kids to see Kiss concerts, but you didn't have the kid telling their parents to take him to Kiss in that generation. True. So I was part of that missing generation that just, when the reunion tour happened, I knew nobody else my age that liked Kiss. And still to this day, people around my age, they're more aware of the band now, obviously, but there are very few diehard fans my age. Right. So I like I say in the movie, not much has changed over 30 years of being into this band. Right. I still get excited.
Yeah, no, and I love that you incorporated some of that story into this new film, and you even have some quick video clips of you as a child, which I thought was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's probably the earliest footage I have of me dancing to Kiss, dancing to the double platinum record that I still have today. And it was one of those things that, you may not know this, but one of the original cuts of The Greatest Show on Earth, before I ever put it out, but one of the original cuts of there, it wasn't a 1977 period piece. Okay. It was going to be a little bit of my story, and it was going to be a little bit of Kiss's story. But once I looked at it, I realized that this needs to only be Kiss's story. So I had all this footage that I had found, and I had all these pictures that I had scanned and all this stuff. So I was like, what am I going to do with it? And obviously, when the end of the road tour was announced, I go, well, let's do something. And here it is. Right.
So, that's, to me, a perfect segue. So you had your last film, very successful. Was that the driving force of doing this film? The fact that you had that, I'll say, unused footage of yourself as a child, and you said, hey, I want to do another film centered around this?
Yeah, exactly. Because I had it ready. I had everything where I needed. I didn't have to go and look for all this footage. It was already captured. I knew where it was. And I saw it. I go, this is cool. Maybe somebody else has the same kind of footage that they want to dig out or they want to watch again. Maybe it'll reinvigorate their love for the band or maybe they'll want to go watch their old home movies again. Hopefully
Right.
they get some type of reaction out of it. But since I already had all this footage, I was like, I want to do something else with it. And I saw a ton of End of the Road shows like you did. And every time I kind of shot a little something, like a little something backstage or a little something going to the show, or maybe a little something here, a little something there. And I had just all this footage that initially I was going to make just this 10-minute documentary about the End of the Road and about how I had this pre-party that I did and gave away Gene Simmons' vaults. Had all this stuff. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do something with this at this point. But those initial thoughts about me wanting to do something short, like a 10-minute film in conjunction with my then podcast at the time, just didn't seem right. It didn't seem like I was paying the respect to the footage and the stuff that I had. So I spent a long time just gathering footage and just gathering stuff, and then just thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to present this in a way that's going to be interesting and that people are going to want to watch it? So I don't even remember what it was. I think I might have been moving or might have been something, but I found my old DVD copy of Iron Maiden Flight 666. And you've seen Flight 666, right?
Yep, sure.
So I watched that, and I was like, man, what if Kiss did something like this? And I was like, wait, what if I do something like this on Kiss? And then I was like, okay, well, where am I going to set the show? Easy. New York City, Madison Square Garden. There's no better place to see Kiss. You know this.
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen many Kiss shows. We've seen many Kiss shows at the Garden. There's no better place to see Kiss. So I was like, oh, I'll have this movie where I go over my history and Kiss's history to the End of the Road. Plus, it'll be centered around a live concert in Madison Square Garden. But I'll do something better, too. I'll take 13 songs and then release a bonus concert. So you have concert footage in this movie, but then you also have this bonus concert where you get 13 complete songs and you get to see the highlights of this awesome show. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And then just so happens when a lot of the End of the Road tour stuff was ramping up, they did all these great TV appearances and these big long form interviews. And I just was able to pick pieces from here and there and kind of weave together not only my story, but Kiss's story on how they got to the End of the Road. And what's interesting is there's not really a whole lot of duplicate footage between this movie and The Greatest Show on Earth. I didn't want to tell a history of Kiss from beginning to end. We would still be here watching it. There's no way you could tell Kiss history in 2 hours. People have tried. So I thought, well, it seems that Kiss is focusing on the beginning and they're focusing on the end. So we'll tell all these stories about where they came from and then kind of where they ended up. And in the middle, that's our story. That's the Kiss Army's story. So that's where my story fits in. So you have this you have the beginning part of the band where you have very, very early footage, very early pictures. You have pictures from when they were recording the first album. And then you obviously have the live footage of the End of the Road. And then you have my footage in the middle to kind of bridge the gap where you get the beginning of their story, the fan story, and then the end of the band.
That night, to me, that's one of the things I really loved about this movie is, I'll call it, and I mean this in a very complimentary, it was more of like a documentary format. The last one was more of like a live concert format, if you will, right? There was some clips in between, but this was a documentary, hearing it from a Kiss fan's point of view. And for me, I enjoy watching that type of stuff because it pulls me in, because I feel like I'm watching something that's relatable to me as a fan.
Yeah, and what I'm hoping from this, well, I'm hoping for two things. I'm hoping for, one, the band sees it and goes, "Hey, Andrew, this Kiss-tory movie that we got going on, we're gonna, we're not gonna forget about it. But we're gonna bring you on because this was so good that we're gonna bring you on and do something." But what I'm hoping for real, I'm hoping it inspires other fans to tell their story and have other fans put together stuff just as good as this or better than this. And I want to be a fly on the wall, and I want to hear their stories the same way that I told my story. So that's what I'm really hoping. I know that there's cameras in everyone's pocket now, so I know people shot footage on this last tour, and I'm hoping that fans could tell their story. And what better time to do it now? We're all stuck home, nothing else better to do. We're all watching paint dry and watching Metallica Mondays. Nothing against Metallica. Nothing against Metallica. They're my favorite band, but this is my favorite band, and this was a story that I felt really passionate about, that I wanted to tell. You get to follow me on the End of the Road, and I feel like it's kind of like the second coming through a fan's eyes.
Absolutely.
Like, can you imagine if somebody was documented their whole tour, their whole journey on the Kiss reunion tour, and they were filming like, oh, this is the hotel that Kiss is at, or check out the newspaper stand. There's 4 newspapers on Kiss today, or there's 4 magazines out on. Imagine if that kind of footage existed.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the coolest thing ever, just to be able to go back to that time. Because, you're a little older than me, and I know a lot of the people watching this are probably a little older than me as well, too. But for me, my favorite part of History and my favorite era of the band is the reunion tour.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So to be able to go back and to be able to see that again would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully somebody did that. So I'm hoping that 20 years from now, someone finds an old, YouTube download of this or a YouTube link of this and goes, hey, this was really cool. This was fun. This reminded me of my journey on the End of the Road tour.
And that's exactly what I got from watching this. And to me, one of the things I loved also is you narrate the whole thing through and through. Obviously there's live clips in between, but you're narrating. So how easy or difficult was it for you to tell that story, to kind of outline that story you wanted to tell?
Oh, it's terrible. It was terrible. The Greatest Show on Earth didn't have a proper script. The Greatest Show on Earth kind of had an outline of what I wanted to do, or an outline of what I was hoping to do. Mm-hmm. The difference with this one is I wrote a long form script, and I told the exact story that I wanted to tell in this script, and I was like, well, okay, I didn't know if I was going to narrate it at first. I was hoping I was going to get someone with a much better voice than me, but once I watched it, I realized that I had to narrate it because it was my story.
Yep, I agree.
But anyway, I wrote down this whole story that I wanted to tell, and as I was finding interview clips, if there was something in my story that was told in an interview, I go, okay, cool. I don't need to narrate that part. Right. I'll just put a Kiss part in there. So that's what I started doing. I just started kind of piecing things together and taking my narration down to the smallest thing possible and have Kiss tell the story and have Kiss move the story. And when you needed me to insert something here and there, I certainly did that. But a lot of my favorite parts are when I go, where Paul was talking about this and Paul remembers here and then Paul picks it up. Mm-hmm. Almost like I was the one interviewing Paul, or Paul and I were in the same room together. Absolutely. So it's cool that I get to do that where Paul's like, well, here's the legacy. And I'm like, well, that legacy is going to continue, and here's why. Right. So those things were really cool because it tells this whole story on how the band got to the end of the road and how fans got to the end of the road. And I tell you, there's at least 10 versions of One Last Time, at least.
And that was going to be one of the things I asked you, because I know last time you edited and re-edited. How many edits did you go through?
Oh my God, at least 10, at least. Okay. And I'm being generous there, because what I would do is I would put this together, and then I would export it, and then I would go and watch it on my TV. I would just be away from the computer, and I would just watch it on my TV with a notepad, going, okay, this is good, change that, this is blah blah blah. So I would do that, and I did that for probably about 2 weeks. I would watch it at night. Or I would watch it in the afternoon, maybe like around 5 or 6 o'clock. Okay. And then I would do my corrections at night, until like 10, 11 o'clock. I would export it and then go to work and do the same thing the next day. So I was consistently busy in doing this. I was consistently busy for almost 24 hours a day, because if I wasn't working or sleeping, I was working on this. And this took a long time to put together. I mean, I was looking at some of my notes here. I mean, I started getting ideas for this in like March of 2019.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I certainly didn't work on it every day since March of 2019, but I've probably worked on it consistently for maybe the last 6 or 8 months.
Right. And
but it's always been, I've always had like ideas, and there's been things going. Here, I want to read you something.
Go ahead, yeah.
And I gotta put my glasses on for this because I'm super blind.
Yeah, me too.
But what I did find is where is this here? I did find one of my original notes that I wrote this. And this is kind of like, this is half narration, kind of half script like, but this is one of my original notes, and this dates back to April of 2019. So over a year ago. Okay. So I'll read you the beginning.
Go ahead.
It almost didn't seem real. I mean, they were going to say farewell in 2000, and here we are 18 to 19 years later, and the band is still out there and remaining active. Really? The news leaks because of a copyright registration? After so many years, could this really be the end? Because if you remember, one of my centerpieces of the film initially was this copyright that they had, and that's how the news leaked. That was going to be like the centerpiece.
Okay.
And then as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, I certainly mentioned it in there, but it wasn't the centerpiece.
Right.
And then I kind of go on. A lot of stuff in here is very similar, where I told a little bit of a different story. Here, I'll read you another little bit of this. It says, as the entire world prepared for the final tour, Kiss announced that there would be a brand new stage set, new costumes, and the show that would leave all others in the dust. In Vancouver, the tour opening, we found out that Kiss wasn't exaggerating in the slightest. Now it was my turn. The end of the road for me began in September when I was documenting Gene Simmons' promotional blitz for his Moneybag Soda line. And I kind of go on against there. So, you know, I didn't need to I didn't need to go back that far to tell my story. And also when I had the Gene Simmons Moneybag footage in there where it was just him out of makeup, it didn't seem like it fit.
Okay.
But my purpose of telling you that was like, this has been in the works for a long time. It's kind of morphed into different things, and it finally got into a version that that you saw, and hopefully everybody else will be watching on May 15th.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's one of the things I love is that you kept a touch of some of that in there, and it brought me back to before the tour began. Because like you said, we've both now seen tons of shows on this tour, but I kind of forgot some of the media blitz leading up to it, you know, whether it was the America's Got Talent, I think it was, that they were on, right? I almost forgot about the fact that you know, trademark thing was leaked, and Gene had mentioned it, or somebody asked him about it in one of the vault things, and he was like, oh, I don't know what that's about. I kind of forgot that those things ever happened, so it was kind of nice to see that. Yeah,
it happened. I mean, Paul did an interview with Michael Cavassini, and he just said there's going to be one at some point. We just wanted to make sure that if we do one, that's what we're going to call it. And then Gene was like, I have no idea. And then like a month later, Gene changed his tune in another interview and was like, there's going to be one at some point. You know, I thought it was important to go over that because they were almost in denial at that point. They were, you know, the cat was out of the bag, and it was February of 2018 when we found out about this. So, and obviously the tour wasn't announced until September. So like 8 months later. And then, you know, 10 months later before we even got a single freaking tour date. From the tour.
Exactly.
You remember that they announced the tour when you guys were on the cruise.
That's right. That's right.
You know, the tickets went on sale, and you guys were like, my God, how am I going to get
tickets?
As
we're trying to board the ship, we were trying to buy tickets to concerts also, which was nuts. Totally nuts.
Yeah. So I think it was important to kind of have that in there because it kind of tells you the story of Kiss's end of the road journey. And I also found as many TV clips as I could because I think it's important to kind of show that they were newsworthy again. I mean, if you remember, Kiss has always kind of been a newsworthy band, but when they announced those tour, everybody was doing pieces on the band, and everyone was saying, "This is the farewell tour. Is this really the farewell tour?" And you know, they did all these little cool things. They did fun. They did all these different shows. They were on CBS, and they were on all these the Today Show, everything.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, not even a month into the tour, they go back into the clubs and they do the Whiskey a Go Go.
Absolutely.
And
which
you know,
I was lucky to be at.
You were at that show,
Yes,
and
that's right.
we were lucky that there's a little bit of footage that that's available on that. But what was cool about that too is it kind of brought everything full circle.
Absolutely.
It's here they are on the last tour in the clubs, but let's talk about how they were first in the clubs. And I had all these cool pictures and these cool newspaper advertisements. One of the coolest things is, and one of my favorite parts of the movie is I used this interview from Sirius XM, where Jim Kerr was the interview MC, which I edited all his stuff out. No offense, Jim Kerr, right? You just didn't belong in the movie. He's fantastic, by the way. He did a fantastic job on this interview. But one of the parts, Eric talks about how he found Kiss in rock scene, and that's how he was discovered. That's how he discovered Kiss. He says there was a rock scene called New Bands, and I was like, no, there wasn't. No, there's no. So I went through hundreds of pages. I got a 44,000-page PDF delivered to me of every rock scene magazine, every single one, because rock scene was a New York magazine and yada yada in the 70s. So luckily it was in PDF form. So one day I just hit Control F and I just typed in Kiss and I looked every place that they mentioned Kiss, and I found it.
Did you really?
Nice. It's in the movie. It's in the movie in there where it says where he talks about new bands, and there's a page that says Kiss New Bands.
Yes. Okay. Right.
So and I found that, and I thought it was important to include that because it kind of adds a little bit more validity to Eric's story. Not to say that we were saying it was untrue, but to hear him talk about it and then see that, I thought that was cool.
Right. No, absolutely.
I mean, and you may have noted. I mean, some people who follow me on social media, I ask for certain things and I ask for help with people because I was looking for stuff from this.
Right, of course.
And I found.
I do remember you asking for that.
I was lucky that I found it. That was one of the last things that I added as far as magazine advertisements and things like that go. But it was too cool not to include.
Absolutely. You know, I'll tell you one of the things, my favorite parts of the film. There's one part you have Paul Stanley being interviewed and talking about how he's the only person in the band who's ever actually seen the band perform. And then right after he has that comment, you cut to a live shot of him either doing Love Gun or I Was Made for Loving You, but I think it was Love Gun from the round stage in the audience. But the camera angle you have is almost like it's on the stage with him. I know it's not, it's probably right behind him, but it's giving you like that bird's eye view of what it looks like for him on that stage, watching the band play, you know, across the other side of the arena. And the way that it was edited, I was like, that's pretty freaking cool. I really love the way that looked. So that was my favorite part of the film.
What's so cool about that is I know we're advertising this film as it's live from New York City, and every single part of audio is from New York City, except little things for little cities here and there. But most of that. But there is live footage from other concerts because I wanted to include certain shots that I was able to find from other shows. So when Paul flies out to the stage, there is a camera on him flying out, and that's from the Garden. But when he flies back, and it's not in the movie, but it's in the complete concert if you stream the bonus concert. So he flies out, and it's New York City. But when he flies back from his little stage onto the main stage, I shot that in Columbus, Ohio. But the shot was so cool that I had to include it in the movie. But most of the movie does come from New York City, just like all the other Kiss records where they say, you know, it was recorded in Cobo Hall, but there's actually 5 other shows that it was recorded at. So it's the same thing, but most of the footage and most of everything comes from New York City. And I thought it was important to mention that, to mention that Paul does get to see the band play live, and he said that many, many, many times that he was lucky enough to do that. So I thought it was a cool part. I thought it's definitely one of my favorites. I mean, every part is my favorite for one reason or another, depending on where I was on whatever day I put it together during.
I can understand that. Look, you sent it to me and I watched it. I told you within 15 minutes of you sending it to me, I started watching it. So, you know, we spoke a little bit about the documentary format and the talking and the narration, but the concert footage to me is equally as great and equally as impressive. How many different camera angles did you end up having to try to edit together on this?
All right. What's funny about this is I had somebody, you know, The Greatest Showrunner that came out in October. I had somebody like, dude, when's the next thing coming out? And I was like, do you have any? So not only do we have an almost 90-minute movie, but there's also, you know, a 70-minute concert that it's almost 2 separate things. So it's almost 3 hours of footage, of brand new Kiss footage that's coming out there. So it's actually 6 different shows from there. So I think there's 3 or 4 cameras from Madison Square Garden. There's a camera from Vancouver. There's a camera from Houston. There's 2 cameras from Philadelphia. There's 4 cameras from Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
And then there's little clips from Cleveland and Columbus. But those are the main shows that I use to edit. There's other little clips here and there within there if I needed a shot here and there, but those are the main shows that are in there. So it's Vancouver, Houston, Philadelphia, New York City, and Amsterdam are the 5 main shows that I use. There's multiple cameras from each show because just depending on who was able to give me footage on there. I know you gave me some footage which I didn't end up using.
It's fine.
I had every intention on using. You sent me Love Gun and Do You Love Me. I had every intention on using that, but you know, here's the thing: when you're putting something like this together, it's not. Oh, I got to use my friend's footage because he's my friend.
No, you got to use what fits the film.
What fits it. So and I had to watch so many things. I mean, listen, if I never listen to Kiss again, I'm good.
How many times did you watch this movie?
Oh my God, 30 at least.
Oh wow.
Easily 30 times. Right. And it just kept on growing and changing into this thing. I mean, one of the first assembly cuts that I sent Julian Gill, who was he was coaching me throughout this a little bit. One of the first assembly cuts I sent to Julian Gill, there was like complete songs in there. And I was like, you know, I don't want to I want to have the songs either go in and out, or maybe you just get a part of a song, or maybe you get another song thrown in here. You know, it wasn't, I want to give you an equal balance of songs and story. Yep. And I wanted the songs to either relate to the story or the songs to carry the story. So, and I think that's what I did. I hope that's what I did. I hope there wasn't too much of either.
That's what I loved about it, is that it was that nice balance between the two. So you spoke about your favorite part. Was there a part that just drove you nuts over the last 8-9 months, just trying to get it right, and you're like,
It was probably the end, because I didn't know how to end it.
Okay.
And I knew I actually wanted to put the credits over Rock and Roll All Night.
Okay.
And then I was like, nah, maybe I'll have the band talking about the end. And then I really wanted to find clips of Eric and Tommy talking about how they felt about it ending, but I couldn't find anything that fit the narrative of the film. So if you notice, there's a couple Gene clips, there's a couple Paul clips, and then Jim Kerr, who was the MC of one of these interviews, he read a fan letter that I thought was too cool not to include. So probably that was probably the end, but I tell you, when I roll the credits start to roll, and it's "I Want You" from the Revenge Tour. Just hearing that famous guitar intro, I'm like, man, this is way better. Well, first of all, it's the first Kiss video of all time that doesn't have "God Gave Rock and Roll to You."
Yep, I noticed that.
As the end credits.
I noticed that. Yep.
Because I cannot stand that. I cannot stand that song.
Yep.
So, but when the credits roll and it's "I Want You" instead of "Rock and Roll," and I go, well, this is cool. And there's still pieces of Rock and Roll Night in there, because you still want to see that. And the very last shot of him where Paul goes, wow, that's from Columbus. That's from Columbus too. Okay. I shot that in Columbus.
That's very cool.
But that was probably the most annoying part, just figuring out how to end it, how to wrap it up, how to say, okay, this is over. And the only complaint that I probably have for this is, I know there's video footage of the Madison Square Garden 77 show, but I wish I was kind of able to include footage from all Madison Square Garden shows. So
I was going to ask you why you didn't, because I expected to see that. So why didn't you use that?
There's not a whole lot available. There's not a whole lot available from 79 and the other 77 shows.
Sure.
There's only handheld stuff from 85.
Right. Yep.
There is a full show available from 1990, but it's shot in a very non-flattering angle. And we've all seen a lot about the 96 clips. But again, it's about the beginning. And it's about the end, and then we're the middle. So that's why I kind of left it like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you said before, sometimes as you're going through editing, you're not just going to use a clip because a friend sent it. You're not just going to use a clip because you think, I want to ram this in. If it didn't fit, then I guess it makes sense to leave it out.
It almost didn't fit the Madison Square Garden 77 clip, but I knew I wanted to include it because it was such an important part of my story. It was that first bootleg show that I got, and I wanted to, and that certainly was not the copy that I got. I still have the tape.
Was your copy only the 20-minute version? Because that's what mine was. Oh, okay, mine was only 20 minutes.
I do know that initially that it was just the encores that were circulating. And then later on, I think around the time Kiss My Ass came out is when the full show came out. Around 94, 95 is when that came out. Exactly. Because if you remember, Making Love and I Want You was on the Kiss My Ass video. That was kind of the first time we saw that. Because that's when that stuff first started leaking. But no, I got it in 1998 at the Rothman Center convention. Okay. Yeah. And it was, and I didn't know at the time that I thought 77 was just a Love Gun tour. I didn't know that the beginning of 77 was. I was 11. Right, of course. I didn't know anything.
Of course.
But I got it, and this was so cool. And I still have that same VHS tape that I bought that day. I won't get rid of it. That's cool. one of like 10 VHS tapes that I still have left.
Yeah, I still have my first VHS bootleg also from like 1981 or 2 or something like that.
I wasn't even born at that.
That's so funny.
But I'll never get rid of that, and I wanted that. I wanted that to be a part in the movie because it's important. I mean, there's a little clip of Madison Square Garden '88 in there where they're getting presented with the gold records. Right. Yep. I was at that show.
Yep. Okay.
And I'm kicking myself for not going to see this last Garden show. Because I don't think they'll be back to the Garden. I really don't.
Wait, so you weren't at the Garden show last year?
No.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Wow, okay.
No, I was not.
Wow,
I was not. I'm really kicking myself. I mean, Julian Gill, who's a great guy, great friend of mine, he bought me that poster. Okay. So that poster is a staple in my Kiss room because it's so cool.
It is.
And it was one of those things where at that time I was seeing Kiss every week, and so I was in Grand Rapids and I was in Cleveland and Columbus and we were doing stuff at Mohegan Sun. It was just one of those things where like, man, I just can't be away another day from work. Sure, it's like in the middle of the week and I had to take off the day before and the day after for travel. So it just didn't work out for me. Right. But looking back, I'm like, man, I should have made it work. I should have made it work. But it was so funny. It was so funny because at the end of the year, my company, they pay you out for your vacation time that you didn't use. It doesn't roll over. I didn't realize that I had 2 weeks of vacation.
Oh,
and then,
no.
My boss was like, "Oh, you're going to get paid out for such and such days." I was like, "When were you going to tell me?" I was like, "You know what? I'm not coming in tomorrow."
That's so funny. No, but you've seen Kiss before, you said, in Madison Square Garden, right? Which tours?
Yes.
Which tours did you go to?
I saw the Psycho Circus tour in '98, and then I saw the Kiss and Aerosmith tour in 2003.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah. I mean, look, that's a hike for you. It's a 500, 600, 700 miles.
Well, but remember, I'm from New Jersey.
That's true. Oh, that's right.
Remember,
right.
So at the time it was not, and I have really fond memories and really vivid memories of riding the bus into Manhattan to go see the Kiss and Aerosmith show.
Okay.
At the Garden. I have really vivid memories of it. Actually, this is not a Kiss story, but the coolest Madison Square Garden story I have is in 2003 I saw Dio, Motorhead, and Iron Maiden at Madison Square Garden.
Nice.
Awesome bill. And I remember before Maiden was coming on, because it was Motorhead, Dio, and then Maiden. And I remember, it's a little bit of an older crowd. It was sold out, obviously. And I remember I was kind of just like milling around backstage. And it was a low part in the show. It was right before Rainbow in the Dark. So I think Ronnie had said something.
Okay.
Then all of a sudden it felt like there was a little bit of silence, and all of a sudden they play the bum, and they go into Rainbow in the Dark. And the place just erupted. It was like nuts. Nothing I had ever heard before. That was the coolest thing to be a part of. And I thankfully I met Ronnie that night.
Oh, wow.
And Ronnie was super cool. And I'm still a huge Dio fan. And I'm a huge Iron Maiden fan.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, without Iron Maiden Flight 666, there would be no One Last Time. So it all kind of works back to each other. It's all like 7 degrees of separation.
Right. Absolutely.
If there wasn't certain things, that it wouldn't happen, because if you're an Iron Maiden fan or if you're a music fan, check out this movie. Get the Blu-ray, because you get the bonus concert with the Blu-ray.
Yep, absolutely.
But the cool thing about One Last Time is you'll be able to stream it for free on YouTube and Vimeo. And if you love the movie, make sure you stick around and you see the concert too.
Absolutely. Now, I love at the end, right before the credits, you say "for Mom," and I had to mention that because I know you shared online your story of going to your first concert at New Jersey.
At the Medlin.
So I picked up on that. And what did that mean for you to be able to put that into your film?
I mean, I dedicate all of them to her because she really encouraged this. Because she knew that it was a creative outlet. So without that encouragement, there wouldn't be this. I mean, she took me to meet Gene and Paul at Tower Records in 2001, and then to see Gene in all his different book signings. And it was one of those cool things where it was encouraged to do this. I know some people's parents, they were like, "Oh, Kiss, well, Kiss." They wouldn't. They kind of brushed it off, but she encouraged all this. So all this stuff, I've certainly amassed it over the years, and a lot of it wasn't from her, but it's a tribute that it all came from there. That's where it started. So to be able to do that is cool, and it lets you know that, and this isn't. It's not taking a slam at anything officially the band has done, but I think this has a little bit more heart than what we may see in the fall when Kiss releases Kisstory.
Right.
So who knows? But I hope that people watch this. I hope people go, this wasn't about someone bragging about their story. This is someone telling you their story and how much it meant over time.
Yeah, and that's the way I took it. And, like you said, it has the band's point of view. It has your point of view. Again, I loved hearing some of those conversations, like Paul talking about trying to create a set list for the tour. And it takes me back to almost 2 years ago at this point, a year and a half ago, like when the tour hadn't started yet and it was fresh, and what songs are they going to play and this and that. So, those are some of the favorite parts I liked. And, so I was going to ask you, what do you think of the set list? Like Paul talks about in the film, the time they spent on the set list. Do you think they got the set list right?
No. No, I
what
don't.
Would you do?
What
would you do?
I think. I know they're older guys, and I know they kind of need to have those solo spots. But I would have gotten rid of all the solos. I would have gotten rid of 100,000 Years, and I would have gotten rid of Let Me Go Rock and Roll. And then in just that window, removing those two songs and the guitar solo and the drum solo, just doing that, they could have played probably 4 more songs.
Right.
I'm not saying do rare songs, because I know the band doesn't like those rare songs. Maybe do something that you haven't done in a while. How is Strutter not on the farewell tour?
God, yeah,
Either farewell tour. How
agree.
is that even possible?
To me, it's one of the greatest songs. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and do something. The album Monster. There's nothing from Monster on there. It would have been cool to hear Long Way Down, or would have been cool to hear Tommy's song.
Yep. I agree.
But it would have been cool. Tommy didn't sing lead at all the entire night, so it would have been a little cooler to do that. If they were to do any rare songs, I would have loved to have seen a medley.
Right.
A
like
different
they did
little
in 2001.
medley. Yeah, with the Ace and the Eric thing. I thought that would have been cool.
I agree.
Do a little medley, keep it loose. You don't need a bunch of lighting or pyro cues or whatever. Just do a cool, fun little medley.
Agreed. Now, I will say, I saw them in February, and they finally did drop Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
I know.
Right? And they
dropped Let Me Go Rock and Roll. They added 2 more songs.
Exactly. Parasite and
Tears
Have Fallen. Exactly. So, and I've been with you 100%. I said I love 100,000 Years. I wouldn't mind if they did the 3 or 4 minute version in concert, right? Cut out all the rest of the stuff and give me 2 more songs. Strutter would have been
Do you remember in 2007, 2008, when that song just wouldn't go away?
Yes.
And you're like, again, it just wouldn't go away. And they were doing it with the Alive stuff. And then I think the first tour that they were doing, I don't know if it was the Hottest Show on Earth tour or if it was the next tour with Motley Crue. But when they finally dropped it, I was like, oh, my God. Oh, God, thank you.
Yep, yeah. And I love seeing
because I don't like the song.
No, exactly. It's too long.
Do you remember, and I look back at this, I obviously wasn't there, but do you remember in 92 when they started doing it again and people went ballistic?
Yes, I was so excited. Absolutely.
And then but it's been played to death and you're like, all right, I had enough.
Yep,
I had enough of this song.
I think it's back to back that and Cold Gin. And Cold Gin's never one of my favorite songs. And
Me neither.
Guitar solo.
Me
so it's
neither.
like 15, 17 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready to sit down now during the show. You know?
And if you notice, Cold Gin is one of the only songs that I don't include. I included a little part of it from the Coventry, but I didn't get it in the proper concert. Cold Gin and Lick It Up are my 2 songs where I'm just like, I included a little bit of the Lick It Up jam, but never the proper Lick It Up song. If Paul Stanley sits down and watches, he's going to be like, you didn't do Lick It Up. It's one of our most popular songs.
That's true. That's a good imitation.
And I wrote it.
That's very good.
That's a terrible Paul Stanley impression, but those are the songs that you're right. Cold Gin, I had enough of it at this point. 100,000 Years, I had enough of it at this point. But I tell you, when you're there and in the concert, you don't it doesn't matter.
Of course, exactly. We're nitpicking right now while we're chatting, but while you're there, right? Exactly. Who cares? I love that you also.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I
was gonna say, I love that you included in the film also. Every night on tour, he does this little spiel about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Right. So I always laugh about that because on one hand, we all know leading up to that how Paul trashed the Hall of Fame. But then every night on tour, he has to mention that they're in the Hall of Fame. Right. And I know he says, oh, but they had to do it. So I love that you included that and some of that backstory there.
Well, it's important because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has one of the worst relationships with Kiss as far as their inductees go. And one of my good friends used to work at the Hall. And when they were trying to book this whole Vault tour, I was the one that put them all together so they could all talk to each other.
Okay.
So I had a little bit to do with Gene actually having his vault at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in Cleveland. But it's so true. They don't care about Kiss. They have never cared about Kiss.
Absolutely.
One of the first times I went to the Rock Hall was before I lived here in Cleveland. I was just visiting, just passing through. And I remember there was a giant John Cougar Mellencamp display. Nothing against John Cougar Mellencamp.
I was there for that
but
also.
I was like, man, I didn't even realize there was so much stuff on John Cougar Mellencamp.
Right, exactly.
And I was like, there's a John Cougar Mellencamp barbecue. Like, why? Where did all of this stuff come from?
Right.
But the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they don't get it. It's not about the bands or the fans. It's just about which band does Jan Wenner like this week.
Right.
And there you go. But listen, it had to be in there because I wanted to show me with Gene at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's why it's in there.
Okay, fair enough. You also include in there footage of last year on the cruise, them announcing the final show. Right?
Which probably isn't going to happen now.
So I was going to ask you, what do you think is going to happen now? Do you think it's going to change the date?
Yeah, they're 100% going to change the date.
I agree.
And I wish I could take it out of the movie.
Oh, wow. Well, you have what, 13 days, 12 days?
No, it's already done. You don't understand.
I know. I totally understand.
It's done, and it's uploaded, and it's everywhere it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it would take me too long to, first of all, figure out what I'm going to put there,
mm-hmm.
and how I'm going to, because the transition between Gene talking about when the last show might be and then them announcing the last show is too good.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Hopefully when people go back and watch this, they'll realize that this was created before they decided to, change the last show.
Which I'm sure
they are going to change it.
Of course. And I'm sure that people will realize that. And I'll say this.
I hope so.
Maybe that'll be the good segue for your next film. You could do something on the final show.
Maybe.
And you could say, hey, it was originally going to be July of 2021, but now it's going to be July of 2047 because by the time...
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, if I do, and I just had this idea today.
Okay.
If I do something else, I'm gonna go to the last show, but I'm gonna document my whole trip to that last show.
Mm-hmm.
Document, going to stay with my friends in New York, and going to my favorite record store and going to all these things and all these places. I'm gonna document that, and that'll be the last. That'll be the one last time. But to be honest, there's no. I don't have any other Kiss films up my sleeve at this point right now. This is the last one for who knows however long. Just because it's been rolling around in different stages for so long. So this is it for a while. So hopefully it gets fans' attention, but hopefully it gets the band's attention too.
Yeah. And I know that you've done non-Kiss type films in the past. Would you ever do another film that's not Kiss and maybe another band? I know you've never done, to my knowledge, other bands, but...
No, maybe it would need to be something cool. There would need to be an idea that I had. Okay. There was someone who commented. He says, "Oh, well, we should get together and do a documentary on the 1989 Batman film." And I'm like, well, there's a lot of really good ones already that I probably can't do any better than that. So what are we going to add? What part of the story are we going to tell that hasn't been told before?
Sure.
Oh, but we could do it and have a lot of fun doing it. And I was like, yeah, but unless there's something that we're going to bridge a gap between, or we're going to uncover something, or we're going to interview someone that hasn't been interviewed, there's really no reason for me to want to do something like that.
Makes sense.
So The Greatest Show on Earth was done because Kiss had never done something like that before. Kiss at Midnight was done because there wasn't a Kiss TV special in the 70s. One Last Time was done out of a passion for Kiss. And it was actually, it really lit a fire under me when Kiss officially announced that they were doing their Kisstory documentary that was going to be out in the fall. And I was like, well, mine's going to be out before then. So, and that's what made me finish it. When I announced the date that was coming out May 15th, I was like, well, I got to finish this thing now.
Right.
Because it's been sitting in limbo for too long.
Right.
But there's a little bit of a sadness in me when I finally hit export and it's the final export, and then I watch it and I have no notes and it's done. I'm like, man, what am I going to do now? This is what I've been working on for years. I guess, over these next couple of weeks, I'm doing literally every Kiss podcast that I could think of,
sure.
Talking about the film and getting people to look at it. But after, once the release date comes and I stop pimping it for after, a day or so after that, man, what am I going to do?
The Encore edition.
No. No. The Encore, I mean, people have asked me about this. The Encore edition of The Greatest Show on Earth was done because when I finished The Greatest Show on Earth, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that. And if I was going to actually be able to do something, was it going to be any good? So it was there was always going to be another version of that movie. Because I knew right after I finished it, I go, well, there it is, it's done, it's out. The moment that happened, I was like, but I can do better. But I wanted to make sure that I can do this before I tried to do this other thing. So there was always going to be an encore edition of The Greatest Show on Earth. There's not going to be an encore edition. In fact, you may have noticed this as I start talking about it more and more. The encore edition, disappears, and it's just The Greatest Show on Earth because that's what it is.
Absolutely. So this is coming out, you said May 15th, and where can people find it?
May 15th, you could follow me on YouTube, youtube.com/Greatest Show on Earth Kiss Fan Films. Or you can just follow me, on Facebook, or just do a quick search. It's going to be on YouTube and Vimeo. One Last Time, live from New York City. It'll be everywhere.
Absolutely, and I'll definitely help plug it on my page because, again, it's worth every Kiss fan seeing it. I'm looking forward to it. I watched it once, and I told you before we started chatting here for the podcast, I watched it on my phone because I'm waiting for May 15th to sit in the house, watch it on the big screen, and do it the right way with everybody else. So I'm really looking forward to it. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is, as long as everything is cool, I think I'm going to be driving up to Buffalo, New York on the 16th.
Okay.
And that's where Gene Simmons Moneybag Soda is, and those guys are really, really great friends of mine. Mm-hmm. But they have kind of like a backyard, barbecue a little bit for their close friends and family, and they have a giant inflatable movie screen. So they go, dude, you got to come here, and we got to watch it on that.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the one thing, and hopefully we'll end with this.
Go ahead.
There's an Easter egg in the movie, and I'm surprised that you didn't pick it out and notice it.
Maybe because I was watching on a little tiny phone, I didn't notice it.
So, there is a piece of... So I was in the front row on my birthday in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was able to get on the screen. Mm-hmm. That little clip is in the movie.
I did not
so
notice that.
As you're watching the movie and watching the concert footage, you'll see there's a brief moment where I see myself on the screen, and someone was able to capture that moment. So that's purposely in there. So go back and rewatch it.
I'll have to go. Yeah,
I'm in there.
And you also talked about being on the 2003...
2004 Rock the Nation.
2004,
if you blink, you'll miss me.
I tried to study it on my phone. I still couldn't find you.
But I'm there. I had really short hair at the time too. Okay. So, but I purposely did that because every time that Paul was talking about the end, I remembered just doing that because that was something so cool. Something so cool. But yes, again, May 15th on YouTube and Vimeo. One Last Time, live from New York City.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to watching it again. I look forward to seeing everybody else see it, getting excited about it. And Andrew,
I'm excited.
Thanks for chatting with me today about it.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Take it easy, everybody. Thanks for watching. See you guys soon. Alrighty, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Andrew. I can tell you I've seen the film, and you Kiss fans are all going to love it. So definitely come May 15th, you're going to want to check that out. I'd like to take a moment and thank Andrew for joining me again. It was a really good time. I had a great chat, and I hope you had a good time as well. And I hope the movie does great for you. Well deserved. While you're here, hit that subscribe button below on my YouTube channel. And head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. That's it for this episode. Until next time, thanks for watching.